Have you heard about El Cucuy? I heard about him when I was a kid. I would hear moms and dads say to the kids, pórtate bien, porque si no, el cucuy te va a agarrar, se te va a llevar. You better be good, they would say to the kids. If you're not good, el cucuy is going to get you and he's going to take you away. Ooh, that made me start to think about it. I wondered, what is El Cucuy like? I started to ask grown-ups, what's El Cucuy like? Oye, ¿cómo es El Cucuy? Some people told me, El Cucuy es un monstruo. He's a monster. Some people said, el cucuy es como un fantasma. He's kind of like a ghost. Some people said, es como un oso negro y peludo. He's like a big, shaggy black bear. But I kept asking and asking, and I began to figure out. The ones who knew best, they told me, el cucuy es un viejo. He's an old man. Es un viejo encorvado. He's an old man who's all bent over. Tiene la espalda tan torcida como la rama chueca de un álamo allá junto al río. That old man has a twisted back, like a crooked branch on one of those trees over there by the river. And they also told me El Cucuy has one ear that looks like anybody else's ear. But his other ear is a big red ear. With his big red ear, El Cucuy can hear everything. El cucuy puede oír las hormigas caminando por la tierra. He can hear ants walking along on the ground. El cucuy puede oír las mariposas volar por el aire. He can hear butterflies flying through the air. And el cucuy can hear it if children are not behaving themselves 250 miles away. He lives in a cave in the mountains, but sometimes he'll come down from his cave to get bad children and take them away. Mostly I have heard about 3 sisters. Tres hermanas que vivían en los tiempos ya muy pasados. I heard about 3 sisters who lived a long time ago. Their mother had died, and their father was raising those girls all by himself. The youngest of the 3, la más menorcita, she was only 8 or 9 years old. But that girl was a worker. She would keep the house clean. She had supper ready for her father for when he came home from work. But the 2 older sisters, las dos mayores, flojas, no ayudaban en nada. Those girls were lazy. They did not help out at all. They would say to their little sister, "Why do you work all the time? You should be like us. You should go outside and play and have fun." She would tell her big sisters, "I'm trying to help our dad. It's hard for him to raise 3 girls all by himself." They would say, "Oh, you're such a goody-goody. Tú eres tan santucha. Tú te crees una santa. You think you're a little saint," they would say. "Go ahead and work all day long. We're going to go and play." Sometimes the man would get home in the evening. He would find out how lazy his older daughters had been, and that man would get angry. He would say, oigan, niñas sinvergüenzas, un día de estos voy a llamar al Cucuy para que venga por ustedes. You better listen to me, he would tell them. One of these days, I am going to call El Cucuy to come and get you. They would say to their father, oh, you wouldn't call El Cucuy on your own daughters, would you? And then they would go away whispering back and forth, there's no such thing as El Cucuy. El Cucuy no existe. It's something parents made up. Well, one day, the older sisters not only refused to help around the house, but they did everything they could to make their little sister work harder. She was sweeping the floor, and they took the ashes out of the fireplace and threw them all over the room. Later on, she was washing the clothes, and they got their father's wet shirts, and they tied knots in them. The little sister couldn't take the knots out of the shirts. When the man came home, and he found out what had been going on, se puso furioso. That man got furious, and he told them, this time I am calling El Cucuy. He stepped out of the house, he turned towards the mountains, and he called out, Cucuy, ven para llevarte a estas malcriadas. You come and take these bad girls, he said. And the girls stood there trembling and looking at each other. Nothing happened. They said, oh, es como siempre decíamos, el Cucuy no existe. Just like we've been saying, there's no such thing as El Cucuy. They turned it into a game. They started chasing each other around the house. Cucuy, Cucuy. But that evening, when the sun was setting and the sky was bright red from the sunset, down from his cave in the mountains came, you know who El Cucuy. His big red ear was glowing in the sunset. He came into the village. Everybody ran away to hide. But El Cucuy walked through the town until he got to the house where the sisters lived. He went right inside. He picked the two older girls up from the table where they were eating their supper, and he took them away. They begged him not to take them, but even though El Cucuy can hear everything with his big red ear, it seemed like he wasn't hearing anything at all. No les hizo caso ninguno. He didn't pay a bit of attention to those girls. He pulled them along with him. Their dresses got torn on the cactus. Their legs got scratched up. Their faces were covered with dust. The tears made little rivers down through the dirt on their faces. He took them to his cave in the mountains. He put them in a deep part of that cave. And do you know what he would give them to eat each day? Una tortilla. One tortilla. Los lunes, los miércoles y los viernes, una tortilla de harina. Los martes, los jueves y los sábados, una tortilla de maíz. Y los domingos, un vasito de agua. On Monday and Wednesday and Friday, he would give them a flour tortilla. On Tuesday and Thursday and Saturday, he gave them a corn tortilla. And on Sunday, agua, a glass of water. They sat in that cave hugging each other and saying, "Won't we ever get back home again? Won't we ever get to see our father and our good little sister again?" El Cucuy would hear them say that. He would poke his head in there and laugh. "Your father and your sister are glad to be rid of you." But he knew that wasn't the truth. El Cucuy knew that was not true because he hears everything with his big red ear. And he knew that every day, as soon as their father finished his work, he would go up into the mountains and search for El Cucuy's cave. He hadn't been able to sleep a wink since his daughters got carried away. Se arrepintió de haberse enojado tanto y de haber llamado al Cucuy. He wished he hadn't gotten so mad. He wished he hadn't called El Cucuy. And then one day, a boy from the little village, El Pastor de Cabras, a boy who took care of the goats for the people of the town. He took all of the goats up the mountainside to eat the grass that was high up on the mountain. And then at the end of the day, before he started home, he had to count the goats. He had to make sure they were all there. Pero no, faltaba una cabra. One goat was missing. He started to look for the missing goat. He went higher and higher up the mountain. From time to time, he would stop and listen. Once when he stopped to listen, he heard a bleating sound, like the sound a hurt goat would make. He followed that sound, and then he saw the goat. One of her legs was jammed into a crack in the rock. He ran to the goat to comfort her and to set her leg free. When the goat stopped making the bleating sound, he heard a different sound, como un lloriqueo, like a whimpering sound, and it seemed to be coming from down below him. He looked deeper into the crack in the rock, and he saw the two sisters down there in the cave. He shouted at them. He said, "Oigan, ¿qué andan haciendo ahí abajo? Hey, what are you doing down there?" The girls looked up and said, "Oh, please, get us out of here. El Cucuy has us locked up in this cave." The boy took off the jacket he was wearing. He used it like a rope. He held the end of one sleeve and he lowered the other sleeve down for the girls to grab. And one by one, he helped them climb up out of the cave. He helped them go stumbling down the mountain back to where the goats were waiting. And he also had a little burro. He had a donkey. So he put the girls on the back of his little donkey. He started to lead the burro down the winding path to go back to the valley. But they hardly started going down the path when they saw the girls' father and their little sister too on their way up to the mountain to look for them. When the girls saw their father, they jumped from the back of that donkey. They ran down the trail crying out to their father. He came running up there to meet them. So did their little sister. Estuvieron un gran rato abrazándose. They stood there hugging for a long time. And the girls said to their father, "Please, don't ever call El Cucuy again." And do you know what? He never did. He never called El Cucuy again because they never gave him any reason to even think about El Cucuy. From that day on, those two lazy girls turned into the hardest working, the most polite girls living in that town. They grew up, they got married, they had children of their own. In time, they even had grandchildren. And even today, if you go to that little town, you're going to see some children in that town who are very neat and tidy. They're polite. They're friendly to everybody they meet. And if you ask the people, who are those nice children? They're going to tell you, oh, those are the great-grandchildren of two sisters who were carried away by El Cucuy once a long time ago. Wouldn't you like to meet those kids?